You're listening to Elevate, powered by Marmiro Stones. Real stories, real insight, whether you're designing the dream, building it, or living it, we're here to spark ideas, share knowledge, and move the industry forward. Let's get to work. So before we dive into, I guess what I'm going to call the story, I like to tell everybody sort of how we met. I don't know if you remember.
I do remember.
I do remember. It is vivid in my mind because I was with another company at the time, and I was at a trade show walking by and just had seen you guys in the past before, but wanted to stop. Walked into the booth after exchanging some compliments back and forth with each other. You looked me in the eye, you shook my hand, and you asked me a question. And that question was, are you happy? And I was like, in my mind, of course I'm happy. But it took me back because nobody's ever asked me that question before, not even my family. And that really, really stuck with me. My answer at the time was, yeah. And, it was honest. And, and you fast forward a couple more years, and my very first phone call when I was ready was to you guys. And I think it's been an incredible family gathering. Like, when you talk about when paths cross at the right time,
Yep.
Sometimes that moment in time is not the right time to join, but sometimes that, people go different ways, and then somehow the right people always sort of come back together. And I feel like it's sort of what happened here. And then now 9 years later, here we are together, sitting in a room. And today's not about me, but it's about, I think the world needs to hear where this all started from, the story, the love story. Even though you don't want to talk about the love story, I'm going to give my questions to Heidi on that one.
Thank you.
Why are you blushing already? But it's super, super important. And whenever we get together on stage and when we talk to in front of people and contractors in the trade, and just doesn't even have to be about business, just you guys both have a presence about yourself that is attractive. It's engaging. There's passion. There's heart. There's, when we start talking about the story, there's grit, right? There's been ups and downs through what now 25 years. Marmiro is 25 years old. In Turkey, we're 65 years old this year. So just an incredible, incredible journey. So I feel that it's time, and I know this is super uncomfortable for you.
No, it is. It is not. It is not. And I enjoy talking about the past.
Yeah, okay. You just don't enjoy talking about yourself.
No, yeah.
So I may make you feel uncomfortable at times.
No.
Okay. But to dive deep, I think people really need to hear the heart and passion behind Marmiro. And this is where it all started, because the one thing that when I started here, when I came for my 2-day visit, because I wanted to, you're like, yeah, spend a week if you want to spend a week. I'm like, I'll never spend a week on an interview. I spent 2 full days, and at that time, it took me 5 minutes to understand and feel the culture and the passion and the love that you guys pour into every single part of the family, the employee, and just the little details from the office, right? Just every little part of it. So let's rewind a little bit, and I guess let's go back even further. Heidi, where'd you grow up?
Tacoma, Washington.
Tacoma, Washington.
The West
Coast
Coast.
girl. Right. Not a Cali girl, but a West Coast girl.
Yes.
Okay. After college, what happened there? Teacher?
I was a teacher.
Okay.
I taught science for middle school.
So
and
cool.
then I was an NFL cheerleader with the Seahawks.
Really?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yes. So I did both those.
Yeah.
And then I ventured out east to Florida.
To Florida. That's really cool. What made you go to Florida?
A relationship at that time.
Okay. I told you we're going to get deep. We never know what's going to come out.
That led me to this one.
Yeah. Okay, we'll get there. We'll get there. And Mo, you grew up in Turkey, yeah?
He was a recruiter for me.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I hired him.
God bless him.
Yeah.
So
Me, born and raised in Turkey, at the age of 23, during college years, decided to just like press the reset button,
yeah.
pack 2 suitcases, and then said bye to the family, and then just like moved to San Diego.
Because your family was in farming over there, right?
Yeah, they were in the agricultural business. Both
Okay.
of our sides. I mean, my mom's side and my dad's side, they both like were like basically in the same industry, and it was very much planned for the next generation to come in and take over. So it just the path was chosen, and then we usually like the new generation would follow up the previous path that was basically just like drawn by the parents, and everybody expected me to be taking over the family business, me and my brother, and then live in that town and then just grow the business. But if it's just like life, different experiences, personality, and then the time is the key. Like, so at that time it came to a point where like I had to reset and I had to disappear, and then I had to find myself, and then I was too confused about life because of the experiences that we were having, and then 23 years of like very colorful life living in Turkey. Like, so I said I need to find myself. So flew to San Diego, started a school, and then at the same time I was trying to find a job, and then I got a job offer a year later. I landed a very nice job in Boca Raton, Florida. So I said I'll still go to school at nights, but I mean back then we didn't have any online schooling system. But I said just like I'll take night classes. I worked for import-export company in Boca Raton, Florida, in textile industry.
Okay.
So, and then until I graduated, I was with that company. I think it's another year and a half or so. And then once I graduated, I had 2 options. I was either gonna move back to Turkey and then follow my dream, which was like owning a restaurant and hospitality business and hospitality industry, restaurants and hotels. And then, my heart was always in that industry. And then, or I was gonna stay and then just like try on my own and see what I can do. And
that conversation happened in a car ride, right, with your uncle and your mom?
My grandfather.
Your grandfather.
Yeah, we were driving to Orlando as a family, and it was my last 2 weeks in the country, and then I was going to go back to Turkey to start the restaurant. And then we were driving as a family, and then my grandfather was sitting next to me, and he was like a very well-educated, very knowledgeable, very high-respected individual in Turkey. And then, it's just like he was sitting next to me, and I asked him, I said, like, grandfather, I said, like, is it wise for me to come back to Turkey, like right away without trying? And then he just like said to me, like, how much longer do we have until Orlando? And then I said, like, 2 more hours. And then he said, ask me this question again when we get to Orlando. So 2 hours, he said, pay attention to your surroundings. So there was silence in the car, and then and then 2 hours later, I asked him the same question again, and then he said, did you see what you looked at the whole time? And then I said, yes, Grandpa. I said, pay attention. And he said, you love it, right? And I said, yes. I said, I love this country. And then he said, if you just come without trying, I don't think it will be the wisest decision, and you'll have regrets. So when he said that, that was it.
Sound like a wise man.
Yeah, and that was it. And he knew what I wanted. So we spent 7 days in Orlando, didn't even mention it. And then we came home. The first thing I went was like to my home office, grabbed the folders, canceled all the containers, and then canceled my flight. And then just like told my parents, I'm staying, but I don't know what I'm going to do. And then I'll find something, but I'm going to try 1 more year. So I decided to stay.
What did you do that next year?
Next year?
Yeah, that first year.
The first year
after school.
The biggest problem was like they left. They said bye, and then I woke up in the house, and then I had no clue what I was going to do. So they were gone,
Yeah.
and I was alone again. And then it was like, what's next? Because I had no job.
Yeah.
I quit my job, and then because I graduated and I was moving back, and I didn't even have any, any plans. I was just like, basically, I'll go with the flow. So luckily, like within a few months, like within 6 months or so, like in that period of time where I was like, hustling and like trying to understand what I like, what I don't like, and then what makes sense to do. And then, like I was good at import export because of my previous job. And then I learned a lot like of like buying, purchasing, and then also like importation and then the customs. So I was looking for something like maybe another product line to bring into the US market. And then I met my business partner in Miami airport. Basically like just like we shook hands, and then like someone introduced us, and then at that moment we clicked. And it was like you could feel that, like we were put together in that environment for a reason and for a purpose. And it was the purpose was much bigger than just like shaking hands and then doing. So we liked each other very, very much. And then he just basically was in the stone industry. It was his father's business, and then he started it in 1959. He came back from Germany for right after his graduation and master's degree. He came to the family business and then said, "Okay, I'm gonna open up the exports for this company because we're a local. They're gonna like the company who provides."
So at that
only
time,
to-
they weren't shipping to the U.S.
No, they weren't shipping to U.S. or they weren't even exporting when he came back. They were just importing, they were just extracting blocks and then manufacturing for the local market. Well, his dream was, why don't we go to Europe? Why don't we go to, other markets? But he was like a single child, and he was just going through his dad's business and trying to take over and then build a system. And you know how difficult it is, two generations in the same company. He had the vision, but certain things were not ready for it. So he just when he met me, I think he just filled a huge gap in his life that was missing, the trust factor, and then the vision, and then also a long-term planning, and then and strength in the U.S. market. And then when I met him, it was also a huge gap in my life, which was the supply chain and then knowledge and experience, because he was 15 years older than me. So I wanted a role model also because he was, and you met him so many times, and then you had the privilege to know him. I mean, he is a very, very unique and very special person. So everybody who meets him loves him and respects him. So he just took me, and then he said, "I have time. We'll do it together, and then let's just run this journey together." So since then, it's been 25 years. We founded Marmiro Stones in 1999. We met, and then the year 2000, we just basically founded Marmiro Stones without knowing what we were going to do. Back then, there were only 3 SKUs in the company. It was only one product line, which was Cremata. And then it was 12 by 12, 18 by 18, and 16 by 16 polished tiles.
French pattern didn't even exist.
Didn't
at that
exist.
Point.
French pattern didn't exist. It was antique didn't exist. Sandblasted didn't exist. Coping lines, wall blocks. I mean, it was only polished tiles that the company was trying to make it thinner, high polish, so they could sell in large sizes, and then just to apartment buildings and so on. So it's been a journey. 25 years later, you look at it now. I mean, I'm sure our family in Turkey also, and they look at where we were in product line wise and where we are right now, complete product line from slabs all the way to your driveway pavers, thousands of SKUs we have from limited colors that we offer. It's mind blowing. I mean, it's just you look back and you say we came from, the 3 SKUs to complete outdoor living set for everybody, and then not only outdoor but indoor as well. So it's been a journey for sure.
So you're running out of your garage to start.
Yes, I was very young. I was 25, so mid-20s, 25, 26. I didn't have too much experience. A year and a half in business is usually not enough to just start your own business, especially if you're an immigrant. And then if you just came to this country 2-3 years prior to your graduation. So it just it was a big risk factor, and then I didn't want to be a regret in anybody's life. Like we always say to our clients, still it's a part of our culture. We don't like to be a regret for anybody in life, right? We always say that. So I told him, I said, look, if you're looking for a big investment, and he's just take a big risk, it's not me. I said, I just cannot just fail. you and everybody else and myself, first of all, myself, I said, I need to start slow. And then I said, I'm going to go very slow. I'm going to learn, and then I'm going to learn the industry, and then we're going to grow slowly but surely. And he said, that's what I like also. Like he's, you know, like he was like on that page with me, like since day one. And then he said, you know, we'll do it the way you want it. And then just like, and he went back, and then he started basically, you know, communicating with me. I remember those days, like now the technology is one click, everybody sees. But I mean, like back then we used to write faxes to each other all the time.
That's awesome.
And then, you know, I think I kept some of those, like the first 2 years of like faxes should be somewhere in my house. But I mean, like, I just like, I used to write him like letters and then fax it, and then he would tell me, and then we would talk about new products. I'm like, can we do this? Can we do that? There were no photos going back and forth. It was tough, you know, even to develop a product right now, it takes like 10 minutes. You know, photos going back and forth, the prices go back and forth, packaging details, you know, 10 people discussing it, and then like the product comes out to life, and then we're like, okay, let's sell it. Back then, it just like, it took sometimes like 3 months just to communicate and see it in live, and then like, you know, just like decide on if it's going to sell or not. So it was much more difficult. I remember the days that I used to fly back with the samples on the plane myself. Like it wasn't a safety issue before, it wasn't a security issue, so you could fly with samples, and I would make bags and then duct tape the rope on it, and then like the stones would be like bags, and then I would carry like the French pattern sizes. The first time I flew in with those sizes was basically those 4 sizes, and then wrapped together, and then with 2 handles, and I brought it, and then like I showed it to the clients.
Because you still couldn't wait, because you were trying to move so fast, you couldn't wait for it to be shipped.
There was 2 ways of shipping, like the ocean freight, which was basically taking 45 days back then. There was no direct line to Miami like port or in the Fort Lauderdale port. So it just like if I put it in a container, it would be 45 days. But if I did UPS or like air shipment, it would have been like, you know, thousands of dollars. But the promotional tickets were like $600 for a round trip to Turkey. So I would just say like, you know, I'm going, and then I will fly, stay 2-3 days, and then come back. So. And then that's what my basically, I would save money, and then I would be more efficient, because the flights were like much more reasonable than air shipping samples back then.
Yeah, they won't let you ship samples now.
Yeah.
Plane, right? Yeah. Those days are long gone, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy. So, all right, so 25 years ago, that's how it started, and you guys hadn't even met yet. So how long Marmiro was born until? How did you guys meet, I guess? Like, how did that come about?
So we met at a restaurant. So I was teaching, and I was substitute teaching, and then at nights I was a waitress at the restaurant down from the house. And then he came in, and that's how we met.
But weren't you working for a company that was next to
later
his?
On.
It came later on.
Later on.
Okay.
Later on, yeah. She was working for the one of our clients. In Florida, and then like, you know, my job was to basically like support them in supply chain. A big installation, like a concrete paver installation company in Florida, South Florida, they just heard that there was a company from Turkey that could tumble 24 by 24 and 16 by 24, like, you know, natural stone pavers, and then bring them to U.S. market. So I got this phone call one day, and then they said, we would like to have a meeting with you right away. And then I'm like, who am I talking to? Who are you? Like, you know, I was trying to understand what was going on, and they sounded very much in rush. And then they said, we want to meet today. So I remember, like, you know, the whole family, like the 2 brothers and a father, like, you know, they were like with some of our friends, I think 3-4 of them, like they just like went through our door, and then they said, like, we're ready, like we want to see, what do you have? And that's the week that the shipments came from, like the first trial shipments, which, you know, like in our warehouse. We had a small facility in Delray Beach, Florida, and then I just put all the samples against the wall on top of the crates, and I was looking at myself, like trying to understand the colors, what we were going to name them, if we were going to do any patterns and things like that. So when they walked in, and then I walked them through the warehouse, they said, this is what we want. You have the gold here for us, and then this is going to be gold one day, and then like we know that, you know, concrete is always going to be in the market, but market needs an upgraded option for concrete pavers.
Yeah.
Sorry. So they said, it's just like, we would like to take the distribution in the whole nationwide, like the distribution rights. We do not want to just like, go only statewide, and then we can turn this thing into a very large volume business. And then you can just help us also with the supply chain. So
How did you meet that company?
I think when I was like promoting it, they found us. I wasn't the person who reached out to them. Like, my phone rang one day and I'm like, they just like found us. But it's just like, because back then it's just like, again, it's just two, three people knowing, because it was such a unique product and it was unheard of that, anybody would tumble, 24 by 24 or 16 by 24 pavers in that thickness in 1 inch and 3/4. And back then it was like unheard of. The closest thing that you could get would be like, there was like a tile store in West Palm Beach that was like, selling French pattern, like they used to call it Ashler pattern, or like a Versailles pattern. And then like, but they were like $27 a square foot.
Wow.
And it just like, that was the market. Only very wealthy people could afford certain finishes, acid washed or chiseled and brushed and so on, like that kind of interior pavers, which is thin antique tiles, in indoors only, and it used to be like close to $30 a square foot. So the paver company couldn't be able to just like go in from like the 2 3s or 4s to like a 30. Like it was a big jump. But when we came in, I think just like what we brought to the industry is like we have the advanced machinery, we do have the experience, we do control the raw material, which is the quarry. So we just know what we're doing. And then now our blocks are going to be extracted locally, produced locally, and then shipped and exported by us.
Right.
So just alone in that side of the transaction, you're cutting 2-3 different middlemen in the source, in the origin. And then what we did is like we imported ourselves, and then we just stocked ourselves, we fabricated ourselves if we had to, and then we delivered ourselves also. So I think what was happening is like, it was just becoming like hey, I am here also. You can afford me, and I'm not that scary. Like, you don't have to worry about it because I am affordable now. I'm not like in the 30 range. Now I'm in the 10 range, 9 range, or like 11 range, depending on the sizes. I mean, that was huge because anybody could afford to spend another $5 a square foot if they're building like a $1 million, $2 million, or even $50 million home.
And what year? That was, what about 2000, 2002 when you kind of started that, met that company?
2000.
2000.
Is
So
the
right
one.
away.
Right
Okay.
away.
Okay.
It was very quick.
Wow.
I got it. I just like in 6 months maybe, like this was it. And then I shut down our operations. I moved into their building and I kept the company Marmiro, but we basically became the supply chain for like another big, like a company that was branding our products, and then their company.
So automatically you're turning the key super fast. You're revving the engine really fast. And they're talking about nationwide distribution.
Nationwide distribution. We'll buy anything you can make.
Wow.
So Heidi was basically like working in that company, and that's how we met.
And then when did you join?
Marmiro?
Yeah.
2002?
Yep.
2002.
2 years into it.
So you made a 2-year connection, separate companies, but at the same time took 2 years to kind of get the ball rolling.
Yeah, 2 years. Yeah, and then when she came, we were very small. Like we were just volume wise, we were very strong, because being a supply chain, we were just basically it was easy to exchange documentation and import, and I was good at it anyways. So it's just like with few people in the office, I couldn't handle like very large volumes. And then when Heidi joined, she said like what do you want me to do? And then, I said, I want you to be happy. Like I asked you, I always try to make sure everyone surrounding me is happy, because once you create a happy environment, I think, and you take out the intoxicated environment out of the picture, I think life becomes more meaningful and more fun to live.
Yeah.
Because once we met, I was going to go back to teaching. So I said, okay, it was at summertime at that time. So I said, okay, I'll be at the office for the summer.
Yeah.
When school starts, then I'll go back to teaching. And then, I don't know, it just that flow, when you get into that environment that's just like so positive, and you just feel like you have an impact and you can do something that you want to do, and it's fun to go to work every day.
Yeah.
And it's not work at all. And he and I obviously have a good connection. It was great to be with him all the time. You know, it was just something that I enjoyed waking up to and being with him, and you know, we could have something that we could fulfill for one another.
Yeah.
And it was a family business, you know, and Too Good and Funda were in it for their family business. We were here with the family business. So just the relationship between their family and our new family, it was just everybody came together. And with them, I mean, they're like amazing people. And I just loved that connection that we had with them. So it was just, everything was perfect, like a perfect storm coming together. So I just enjoyed the environment. So I stayed trying to figure out what I should do in the company.
Yeah.
And then everything just evolved.
So 2000, so this nationwide company, how many locations do they have?
At one point, we were shipping to 5 different ports in the U.S. and two in the West Coast, like basically like, you know, 2 in California, North and South. We were doing in Texas, multiple locations, but I mean like only one port we were shipping it to. And then they had probably 6 or 7, like the total from starting from like, you know, the Northern California all the way up to East Coast, so Northeast. And they had 18 at one point, I believe, like, you know, between 15 or 18 salespeople, and then a lot of locations. And then we had great plans of, you know, like increasing the volume, and then but the biggest challenge was they were more like a drop shipper and then like a wholesaler. The mentality was not connecting with the end user. They wanted to be the supply chain for the distribution centers. So what happened is like they disconnected us, like basically that model disconnected us from the end user, and then like what's needed. And then it was always less SKU, more volume, less SKU, more volume. And then as a manufacturer, you love it, because it's just like, you know, every time you have another SKU, it slows you down, and it takes the you know, the cost of opportunity of creating new product lines is huge. We all know that.
Decreases efficiency in the
Of
factory,
course.
right?
And
Yeah.
then it decreases the efficiency like in the factory, and then it creates new standards, increases the risk factor of like making more mistakes. It just like it becomes, you know, it takes longer times to get the product accepted and then turn into profitability. It becomes a huge investment financially with space and then like and so on. So they never wanted that. They were like, they would put me in a room and then they would say like, you know, we want you to make this size in these 3 colors, but we want, you know, like the 5 million square feet next year. And then we would go back and then say, okay, you know, like 1 size or 2 sizes, and then 1 color, 1 finish. Can you make like, you know, million square feet next year? And then we would do it and then spread it out to 12 months and then divide it per port, divide it per week. And then like we would just attack. But what they were missing was, you know, like you cannot be forever if you do not solve the market's needs. And if you try to become like a commodity, the chances of failure is a lot more.
Yeah.
In just in that route. And then they preferred like, you know, low margins, high risk, and then like, you know, less SKU, and then like, you know, mass volume, mass production. And then it was a big threat. And then we learned it the difficult way, because when the economy was in bad shape in 08, 09, when the financial meltdown took place, all those stone yards, all those department stores, all those customers, they just like stopped selling.
Yeah, let's talk about that for a second, because at that time, before getting to that point, there was no brand, right?
There was no brand.
Right? So
Nobody
you were
knew
selling
us.
to this company who was reselling it to...
It was private labeling it. Yes.
They were private labeling. So nobody knew who Marmiro was. They just knew it was a marble or a travertine, and it was this
Or
pattern, it was this size, or
Crema Rosa.
Right.
Yeah, none of our names were known, and then none of them, I wasn't known. Nobody knew who I was. Maybe few people saw me like at the trade shows, but I mean, like I was basically behind the scenes making it happen. They would tell me like, you know, 50,000 square feet of the SKU needs to go to Northern California within, you know, like the 6 weeks, and then I would make that happen, you know. But I was always behind the doors, and then it was a little bit of a lack of education, lack of experience. I was good at logistics. I was good at drop shipping. I was good at supply chain, and then the Turkey team did an amazing job. And then I flew 6 times sometimes, like, you know, like in a year, every 2 months I would fly, and then I would, you know, like the try to teach the U.S. culture that if you say 10 o'clock, you got to be there at 9:55, not like, 11 o'clock, where the Mediterranean culture used to be like a lot different than what we are.
Right.
So it's just like, I had to create that while I was trusting the trust, and building the trust and the relationship with the family in Turkey, because we just met each other, like, in the year 1999. I was also trying to bring the teams together, or like I was just like trying to build a team in the U.S. with Heidi, and trying to just like, like the which didn't require too many people, because we were just like order takers, and then we didn't do any distribution. And then like, but the Turkey side was investing heavily on human resources and machinery. And, like then the more facilities to build, because we couldn't keep up with the demand.
Right.
Because the graphics show like almost like, 45-degree jump, like, like from year to year, like it was mind blowing. So, but when the financial meltdown happened, we lost 90% of our revenue in 1 month.
So you're sitting down at a table very similar to this.
Yep.
And people across the table. What was that conversation like?
The conversation was interesting because, like, there was a father and then 2 sons and a daughter. The daughter was like more like the accounting side of it. And then the sons were more involved in sales and, like ops, and then, like the supply chain and so on. And then, and they had their own team members. They had their, like, other team members. And I was the only one who was representing Marmiro. So they told me like that, just like, look, Mo, like we have a great relationship, we just like, we appreciate you and Heidi, and then, like the Too Good and Funda, and then what the whole teams bring to the table. But we have bad news. Unfortunately, we have no money to give you. And then, like everything that we owe you might never just like come to you. If you want to cancel all the orders, you should, because we're not going to buy them. So if you ship it, it's not going to be ours. It can be yours. And then we have no clue when we're going to have money ever again if we do. So, and
at that time, how many containers were coming a month in the country?
Between 100 and 200 a month average, like it was like to all the ports. And then we were planning for a lot more quantity. Like it was, we were going into, we had many behind the scenes plans of like bringing this into like, all the department stores and so on, like, so Home Depots, we were already in 70 locations. We were targeting 2,000 locations in the U.S. and just one account was Home Depot. So we were planning for very, very big plans, like, for a long time. So we felt like somebody came in and shut off the valve, and then the room was dark, and then it was pitch black.